What's going on, millionaires? You're listening to the Million Dollar Mind Podcast, episode 157 on the science behind hope and limiting beliefs. So today, our guest of the hour, we have Ms. Graciela Moore. And I'm excited to have this conversation because Grace is a top mentor on Wisdom, fellow top mentor. I met her on the Wisdom app, which if you guys are not on it already, you should definitely check both of us out on the Wisdom app because it's just another platform to have personalized conversations, tap in with us, hear our talks live. So that's where I met Grace and, just our conversation flowed. So I want to have this conversation a little bit further here with you millionaires as far as this topic that we're getting ready to discuss, which I'm super excited about. Grace is also the creator of the Hope series and Get in Tune, which we're going to talk about that as well, and a certified life coach, which Grace, I'm excited to hear about your journey into, just becoming a life coach, the steps that you had to take, what made you want to join it. And, before we start there, I do want to pass the mic off to you to do a little bit of a further introduction to our guests and tell us a little bit more about, what we can expect from today's episode.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that I'm here. Super honored and excited to connect. And so my name is Graciela Moore. I am from Puerto Rico, but now transplanted in the US here in Florida. And so I speak Spanish as well. And so I started my journey into consulting and sales with a background in real estate. And with that came a lot of coaching and a lot of hand holding because moving across the US or from another part of the world is very, it's a huge life event, right? And so when the pandemic started, and at the time I was working as a realtor, but for a corporate realty, so I wasn't my own enterprise like most real estate agents are, I got furloughed. And with that came a lot of free time and the opportunity to think, well, how can I go deeper into facilitating selling, quote unquote, selling, and helping people along a journey? And so it opened up the conversation to life coaching and getting certified. So that's what led me to here.
Awesome. I love to hear it. I love to hear it. And so this is news to me. I didn't know about your journey into real estate as well. How did that start? What got you into real estate? Because I'm into real estate as well, and we talk a ton about real estate on the podcast. Do you think that was any bit a part of your journey into the Grace that is joining us today, and kind of what led you into the life coaching?
Yes. So the entrepreneurial go-getter must work mindset for me started at 14 with the opportunity to have my very first summer job. And essentially, I've been working with whatever endeavor ever since. And so when it comes to sales, first it started with the bargainer side of me being the buyer, because when I got that first job at 14, I started collecting jewelry, right? Because I was making money, a lot of money for a 14-year-old. and I've always been drawn to the collection aspect of many things. I've collected bottles, I've collected books, I've collected stamps, whatever in my journey. And so jewelry has always been an affinity of mine, kind of like a hobby, right? And so I discovered the bargaining side of that sales conversation early on in life. And then at 19, I was a freshman in college. I wanted a job, but I didn't want any job. And so there's that entrepreneurial mindset of thinking outside the box, not just filling a work, form to get a job, anywhere. And I started selling Avon. Do you know what that is? It's super old, right?
I definitely am
And
familiar with Avon.
and I was like, yeah, yes. And so that was my first experience as a salesperson, right? Here's the product. Here's what it can do for your life, and let me know what you want. And here it is. And so I was 19 when that experience started shaping the sales background and the selling without selling and the marketing side of things. This is my business, and how I present it, matters, and how I show up makes the difference. And so I learned all those lessons early on throughout my degree, which has nothing to do with business because I'm a literature major and a film major. And so it all happened like in the back end. It all led me, but it wasn't done necessarily on purpose, right? And so during my master's, I was in a car accident, and all of a sudden I found myself.
Yo, millionaires, what's up? So we talk a lot about real estate as well. Entrepreneurship, real estate, mindset is all the topics of the $1 Million Mind podcast. So much so that I'm starting to have a lot of you millionaires coming up to me and asking me, what are the best ways to get into real estate, right? You guys know that I personally started off wholesaling. And within the 18 months when I first started wholesaling, I've generated over $1.4 million for my company just in wholesaling before we even started picking up properties of our own. So with that being the case, I've listened, I've heard the feedback, and we finally started the Side Hustle Academy program specifically for real estate investors and aspiring real estate investors who want to learn some other exit strategies without the traditional ways of going through real estate school and becoming a realtor, or having tons of money to dump into properties when we really don't have the money to spend anyway. So it's a whole nother world out there when it comes to wholesaling. And it's just a strategy of learning when to dispose properties that don't make sense for your portfolio. But to learn more about that, you can either go to kaispeaks.com/academy, or you can go down to the link to learn more about that Side Hustle Academy program for real estate investors. Let's get it.
And so I realized that I didn't want to go back to my master's and decided to pursue real estate. And I did. And let me tell you, it was not easy. I'm curious to hear your side of the story, but that test, OMG. I may be a seller and I may be a hope expert, but I am not a tester. And so I remember taking my license exam 6 times. Everybody, do not give up if you flunk your license exam. It is meant to be so difficult. But really real estate is not that complicated, right? And so I remember failing my exam 6 times and not giving up and not giving up. And then I got my license. And I started selling homes and helping people along that journey, which I realized was pretty deep. I kind of underestimated it going in, but Florida is a hub for people moving here from all over the world. They want to come to the Sunshine State. They want to buy vacation homes and just spend half of the year here. And with that comes an opportunity to connect with people internationally. But at the same time, which is all well and good, but at the same time, it comes a lot of responsibility, because uprooting your family and taking them to a brand new place and going through all of these changes, that's not easy. It shouldn't be taken for granted. And so that planted the seed for me to want to help people further and to help them even deeper than just handing them a key. Oh, yay, you bought a home. And so when I got furloughed, I could have jumped into real estate again, but I said, no, I want to just coach people in a deeper capacity. And so there we are again with that side of the story where I just jump into the certification, and it's been wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And for me, my experience in the real estate is a little bit different. I actually don't have a license, and that's something that I am getting into. I started off in the investing space, primarily going through wholesaling to kind of build up the capital, learning that skill, and then kind of working directly with investors and investing in the properties that way. But I've heard so many things about the testing, and I'm not a tester myself. And that's probably why I've been putting it off so much, but I do want to at least
Yeah.
have the license to have that versatility. But it's really cool to hear that you at 19 started off, selling Avon products. And for me, I've at the age of might be 18 or 19 as well, I started selling Cutco products, which was my introduction into sales. So it's very interesting
Those
to
are
hear
good
that
knives.
they are
Cutco is
very good knives.
really good knives.
They are very
Yes,
good
they
knives.
are.
And when I got into it, it just opened my eyes into like what sales can do as far as personal development, professional development, and just understanding business in general. Do you feel as though your beginning experiences in sales, you're still kind of utilizing those skills and techniques that you've learned back at 19 to how you communicate with people now? And if so, in what ways?
Yes, that's a great question. So absolutely, the answer is yes. And there's that element of soft selling, if you will, right? Instead of a hard sell. Buy my product. Here it is, right? And so I've been a content creator for, I would say, almost 10 years. I've been on Instagram since it first came out and I was a student still. And so with that came the the flow of opening a store on Etsy to sell, antique and vintage jewelry, and then figure out how to sell it, right? With my social media and all of those endeavors. With that came a lesson on how to soft sell and not hard sell. And this was years ago. And so fast forward to me taking that certification, and hopefully anybody listening who is getting certified as a life coach is getting certified in an institution that also provides the business side of the equation, as Lumia Coaching did for me. And so when we are already done with the hard stuff about how to be the best coach you can be, and we're into that business wing of the certification, a lot of things made sense for me. A lot of boxes were like, oh yeah, I've done that. Oh yes, I didn't know that that was called soft selling, but I know about that. Or, oh yeah, I can appreciate that I am the brand as a coach. Oh yes, I can appreciate that my presence matters, because as a real estate agent, you are the brand. Most realtors put their face on the business card. And why do they do that? Because we are hoping that the client is going to put our business card on the refrigerator and see our face all day long, and hopefully one day when someone they know needs to buy or sell, they're going to be like, oh yeah, there's that card on my fridge, let me go get it, that realtor that gave it to me. And so that's marketing, right? And when I was studying to become a coach and we were discussing all of these things about branding, um, selling your offer, right? So a coaching package, we call it an offer, and figuring out your niche and all of these things, it really did happen naturally. And I say it in quote unquote because there's no doubt that my background is what really led to that natural feeling of, oh yeah, I know what this is. I already understand this concept. And with that already knowing came a comfort of, oh yeah, I've done this before, I can do it again. And I literally launched my coaching practice the day after I got certified, because I just worked to launch my business. It wasn't the first time I launched a business, and I just went with it.
That's amazing. And Grace, I would love to hear, your advice to our millionaires that will be listening to this, as far as, the success that you've had through the years with your experience from sales, and how you've utilized that experience to, just kind of make your life, your business, and everything kind of connected and more easier for you, right? Especially when it comes to like soft selling and hard selling. And most of us, when we start a business, we think that the biggest part of the business is, sell, and link spam, when it's more so conversational than we think. and most people don't consider that sales. So what advice would you give, or why would you encourage, people of all industries and all walks, no matter, if they're getting into coaching or they're getting into, starting a cosmetology business, whatever it is, why would you encourage people to at least study sales prior to jumping into that realm of entrepreneurship?
Yes, that's a great question. And I loved how you said that it's more, that selling is more conversational than we just think, or that we are thought to believe or driven to think or whatnot. Because that conversational piece is the clue to that ties into how I see it or how I experienced it. And so it has to do with authenticity. It has to do with who you are as an individual, because a lot of people may be selling the same product, right? A lot of people may be selling this, but how you sell it makes a difference. And how I sell it makes a difference. And so when it comes to any business, any endeavor, anybody, millionaire, poor, middle class, right? Making sure that you believe in the business, making sure that you are selling a product that you've tried and that you believe works, right? There's that authenticity factor of knowing, and making sure that it aligns with who you are. And so that this leads me to the biggest clue, which is, if you don't know who you are as a person, and hopefully you do, not you, but in general, right? If you don't know who you are as a person, there's a disconnect between yourself and how you're showing up and how you're selling and how you're creating your content. And it seems kind of silly to think, oh, now we are going to talk about soul alignment. But in the end, if you don't believe in it, you shouldn't be selling it. If you don't think it works, come on, please just find something else, right? Because you need your client to fully believe so that they buy. And if there's any hint of doubt, they won't. And when it came to selling, quote unquote, selling my product online, so first I started with the jewelry business, and I still have an Etsy account, and I still help people design their wedding bands and their engagement rings. And I have, local jewelers whom I can speed dial, right? And so it's a hobby, but it's still a business, right? When it came to jewelry, and then a personal curiosity about MLMs, and so I joined an MLM because I wanted to know the aspect of MLMs and how they work. And I sold lip syncs for a year, and then when it came time to renew my membership, I was like, okay, I tried it, that was fun, thank you so much. But I couldn't just post about makeup all the time. Push. People wanted to know what else was going on with me. People want to know what I'm struggling with. People want to see me without makeup, so that then when I show up with makeup, it's like, wow, she's right. It really does make a difference, or it really makes her look like this, or it really does what she says it's doing. And so I feel like without being authentic, nothing else really flows. Because let's go back to that conversational word, the word conversational that you said. If there's a disconnect between who I am and what I am doing, how am I going to articulate that? It sounds awkward just to think about it, because it's not natural, right? And so if we were just to look at it from a conversational perspective, we have to speak about what we know. Mm-hmm. And we have to speak about what we believe in. Does that answer the question?
It does really answer the question, and it brings me to that next question, is like, what is the first step? Is it, education? Is it education of self? What is the first step to build up that that belief or strong discernment that, you know, this is who I am and this is how I present myself. These are my moral values. These are my, you know, my core values. What is the first step to identifying this person before, you know, coming up with a product or coming up with a service to, you know, help others?
I would definitely say, excuse me, I would definitely say that there has to be a curiosity, and so there's research involved, right? There's a phone call, there's a meeting, there's somewhere that you need to go to find out, like you said, what are my values, and my values outside of what I already know, and that's where the research comes in, or a meeting or a coach or a business consultant, because we tend to think we're, well, my values are love, faith, and hope. Or we tend to think, well, I value my productivity because I'm very committed to my work. But these are not values. You know, we value social justice. We value wisdom. We value hope. We value humor, right? We value love. We value temperance. Those are values. And when you take a quick assessment, let's say that you know, let's bring it back to me and what I do helping business owners. To answer that question, the first step on my session would be, let's take an assessment that tells us what your top values are right now in your life. Because a year from now, your values may be different, because we all change and evolve and we all ebb and flow. And most importantly, we adapt to what's going on in our lives. And so in 2020, when we were all united, or maybe it was 2019, I apologize, but when we were all united as a nation for Black Lives Matter, I assure you that for most of us, social justice was at the top of the list that year. As we move on from that situation and we evolve into our everyday life and we go back to our lives, well, now social justice is not so prominent as a value, and it goes down the list because other values come up to help you along the way. And so I would say that's the first step. It's figure out exactly what your values are, because then you can transcend into bringing those values into your business, into your day-to-day, you know, what you're doing, and or what you can create that you didn't even know you could create because you hadn't had the awareness of looking at your values the way that the Institute of Character makes it, you know, puts it all together with their assessment.
Yeah, I love that, especially the word that you use, curiosity, Grace. Because when it comes to curiosity, and it's funny because I just had this conversation yesterday for another episode where we were talking about kind of reverse engineering creating products and services and just offers in general. And a lot of times when we create these offers, we create what we want and what we value, and we don't really do the research to see what other people are having problems with and what other people value. And so to do that, you have to have this curiosity to where, one, you know who you are, you know how you can communicate to people, but you also have this emotional intelligence as well to know how to communicate to others and how to make others feel a certain type of way about your presence. Do you have any tips? Because we not too long ago had a conversation about, you know, HSP, highly sensitive people, right? And so when you consider that a large amount of the population is considered, you know, highly sensitive to these things,
Mm-hmm.
but how can you just be more aware of just emotional intelligence and just making your presence known in a positive way with people, so that you can ask questions like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Do you have any advice for this product or this service? So that you can be open about asking people about these products or services that you're thinking about creating, you know, without coming across as salesy or any of those things.
Well, I feel like that question can be divided in two things.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned it first in real estate, right? The first thing your broker tells you when you get licensed, right? You have to, unless you become a broker, if you just become a sales associate, you have to have your license like hung with a brokerage, right? And so the first thing your broker will tell you is you need to tell everyone you know, your sphere of influence, that you're selling and that you can facilitate, and who do you know that needs to buy and sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that can be very annoying. I know, I've been there. Like you said, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
how do we approach this question without it being a hard sell? In the end, the people that resonate with the way you sell will raise their hand when they need it. And so then there's that aspect of not giving up, because you need to keep marketing. You do need to keep putting your business out there. And that's why word of mouth is so important. And when it comes to, and so that applies to anybody, not just highly sensitive people in the sales industry. But when you're a highly sensitive people, which to your comment, yes, it's 20 to 30% of the population are highly sensitive. That is mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why there's no highly sensitive person expert on an elementary school, I have no idea, because it really does affect our children as well. And so when it comes to being highly sensitive and the uncomfortableness that can be created when you are in precarious situations where the fear of the unknown comes into play, because you don't know if this person is going to buy. You don't know if this person is going to connect, right? There's a lot of unknowns in selling. Is this even working? Are people even listening? Does anybody really care, right? All of these questions, when you're highly sensitive, they affect you 100% more than when you're not. And so understanding who you are as a highly sensitive person, finding guidance so that you can really turn your sensitivities into working material. I am no longer getting trapped in fear of the unknown. It is no longer hindering my process, right? Finding that person that facilitates that clarity and awareness allows you to have control of your business and to essentially function as if you were not highly sensitive, but really it just comes in different ways. I feel like it comes in better ways because it makes me an intuitive business person. And now I'm using my radar for energy, right? Let's just call it that. Now I'm using my radar to point me in the right direction and to know, no, I'm not necessarily interested in having that conversation. I want to have this conversation because I'm vibing with this person, because the energy is there and I'm a highly sensitive person. And so that is important for me and for my business. And it's a whole different mindset. But still, even for a person who doesn't qualify as highly sensitive, knowing who they are and knowing how to approach their product with genuine care will resonate with the people that it will resonate. It's a question of, do you really have something here that serves and that helps, right? Because we're all trying to solve a problem, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of substance that goes into creating something that people will buy and a lot of insight. And if you don't put your heart into it, it shows. I feel like it really does.
It really does show. And speaking back to your point of, if you have someone that it resonates with, it kind of brings me back to some advice that I have given a lot of my students countless times. Again, it's more so if you have a product or you have a service that it's actually helping people, right? It truly helps people. It is true to who you are. Then you can't say the wrong things to the right person. Right. If they're the right person, even if they're not the right person at this time that you expect, there's no wrong thing that you can say to this person if they are the right person. And it kind of brings back to, as long as they relate and if they resonate with you, they'll come around. They may not always come around in the time that we expect, but they will come around indeed. And going back to the HSP, I do want to touch on that a little bit more and kind of bring it
Yeah.
and tie it into tonight's topic. And not to diagnose, not to self-diagnose myself either, but I do want to put myself in the shoes of being highly sensitive, right? So being a highly sensitive person, how does that affect our abilities to overcome self-doubt, since that's what we are talking about, the science but behind hope and limiting beliefs. How does being highly sensitive play a role in how we cope, or how we affect, or how we overcome these things like self-doubt and limiting beliefs?
So I want to just make it clear that the fact that we use the word overcome, or the fact that I may propose a solution, does not mean that someone like me, who is the coach talking about all of this, doesn't struggle with any of these things. It's not that I don't, it's not that I'm so confident I don't struggle with imposter syndrome. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
judged of that. It's like, oh, you don't struggle with that. And no, I do. And it's not like I don't struggle with the anxiety that goes into energy and people's vibes, right? It's a question of training ourselves, essentially our brains. So there's neuroplasticity comes into play, and shifting. There's that word. Because as a highly sensitive person, imposter syndrome and the fear of the unknown is like that ruminating mind that never shuts up. It's like negative, 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 negative. The ego, right? You're not
Mm-hmm.
enough. Who made you think that that was a good idea? What are you talking about? Hope, like, who cares? It's such a simple thing. All of these thoughts, right? However, after experiencing the journey and after tapping into bringing awareness to all of the things that consume you in a negative way, and shifting into thinking strategically, and shifting from that into owning who you are and your sensitivities. And then that shifts into, well, now my sensitivities are my power, because now my inner monologue says, yes, you can do it. Yes, let's just put it out there and see what happens. Oh yeah, and what about this? Oh yeah, that works. Let's keep going. And then the hope aspect of it has to do with when you employ hope as a tool, as a mindset, and you apply the vision that naturally happens when you employ hope, because hope is the belief that something is there. Hopefully, something is there, so let me reach my hand in the darkness. Well, then you can sit in fear of the unknown, because essentially all you have to do is wait. But without understanding hope, I would have I would have launched my business, and then I would have gone crazy, because it took like a month for me to really have a client. That month would have been a nightmare. But
Mm-hmm.
because I understood what I was doing, and because I went through the journey that I now facilitate for other people, I spent that month creating more and reaching out and marketing to more people and expanding my network. Essentially, I was not idle just because, oh yeah, I launched my business, I threw my offer out there, and now I'm just going to sit here and wait. And then it's like, oh my gosh, nobody's buying. Oh my gosh, what were you thinking? No, I'm going to get to work, production, creativity, all these things that once you apply the vision, the next steps just, you already know they're there, and you just gravitate towards. But again, if there's no heart and it doesn't resonate with you as a person and with what you value, that presents the first obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it doesn't come from your heart is the first obstacle, because you're going to sit there and be like, what am I supposed to do next? I don't really want to do that. So what is the other option? And you're self-sabotage in a way because it doesn't open the door to creativity.
Yeah, yeah. I think that having a why, having a bigger purpose, definitely opens the doors for
A mission.
creativity. Exactly, a mission is because when you get that no, and it's something that you're passionate about, it's like, okay, I got to know what else. So speaking of no, what does that first no mean to you? What does that do for you? What are you now thinking about, and what are you now trying to create when once you get that no, the first, the second, maybe even the third time?
Oh, yeah. So I'll tell you about the first time I got a no after a few months being a coach, and I wanted to be one of the many coaches in this endeavor. And the answer was not now. Okay, we're not hiring now, and that's not a hard no. I understand that. But I got no time to wait for you to hire, so obviously it is a no. Why, right? And so that was the first time. And let me tell you, I went through all of the motions. I felt the anger, I felt the anxiety, I felt the insecurity, I felt the unworthiness. Oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. They don't want me. I felt all of these things that are quite normal, and it's okay. The question is, once you go through the motions of all of those emotions, what are you going to do? And how are you going to do it? And so the answer for me was, okay, well, thank you very much, not today. Let me take this weekend to throw myself a PT party, and then come Monday, I'm just moving on to the next offer. Who else's door am I going to knock on? Who else am I going to reach out to see if they need my help and assistance? Because I am here and this is what I have, and I know that at some point it's going to work. And so I just kept going. And all of a sudden the world opened up, and I'm so grateful. I can't begin to express how grateful I am, because I didn't give up and I didn't let the first no just shut me down. And it takes a lot of work, personal work, to get to that point. And all credit to Jesus and my therapist and my counselor and my husband and my BFFs who listen to me vent, and all credit to my faith and whatever. The point is that the work really does make a difference, and it really does matter. And by that I mean, if you can be a millionaire and still have triggers, and still be affected by your past trauma, and still need clarity, and still be consumed by sensitivities because you're highly sensitive and you have no idea what that means. And so it really does matter when we reach for help and when we really try to bring perspective into our projects and our lives.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, as far as you know the work that it takes to identify these things, just to be self aware, just to be consistent and showing up for yourself and showing up for others. And it kind of sounds like if you're not willing to put in that work, if you're not willing to be consistent in those areas, then it may be a sign, it may be a telltale sign that it's not something that you are really passionate about. It sounds like something that you like, something that you thought it was worth exploring. But if you find yourself fighting so much, and it's like pulling teeth, like they say, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And that goes outside
That's
of,
right.
the corporate work that we thought that meant for. But I think they meant work as in, your life's work in general. So it sounds like if you don't enjoy the work, it's not necessarily for you. So you need to find something that you will enjoy. And
Right.
another thing you brought up, Grace, was that imposter syndrome, that even as a coach that, has helped many others and has done a great amount of things for yourself as well, still dealing with that imposter syndrome. Some people may associate that as something that means also that it's not for you, right? That you might be in the wrong work. But it sounds like you're very passionate about what you do. So, like, how do you think imposter syndrome, and that's my alarm to do push-ups. How do you think imposter syndrome creeps up, even when you are walking in your purpose, and how do you constantly combat it, knowing that you're still walking in the right direction and you just feel it creeping in? What are some techniques that have worked for you?
So, first of all, I would like to express my own experience with imposter syndrome and how it evolved from childhood. Because my experience, my very first, at least that I remember, my very first experience with thinking that I couldn't do something, or thinking that I wasn't good enough, or thinking that what I wanted was too far out of my reach, my very first memories of that feeling, it was always someone else telling me I couldn't do something. My siblings, my family, my friends. And so as an adult, there was that curiosity and tenacity of saying, well, who says I can't do this? I'm going to give it a try, right? The results will speak for themselves. I'm not going to let anyone tell me, especially after going through all of this personal healing journey where I can look at others and appreciate their own journey in trauma. And now as an adult, I can look objectively and say, people telling me I cannot do something, it's about them and their trauma, right? And there's that perspective that a coach or a therapist may put into words for you, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. And so it really does happen daily. Let's use the example of you and I and how we couldn't connect at first. Did the thought cross my mind that you may have changed your mind and just canceled? Yeah, it was a passing moment because the ego is like that. And it's like it just happens. The negativity, there's opposition in all things, and for every good thought that comes to me, there's an opposition thought that battles with it, right? It is the nature of all things. And so the question is, can I step back and think with my brain and say, no, of course he didn't cancel. This is important. I am important. My message is important. And so we just need to communicate and figure out the disconnect. And then here we are. We made it work, right? It turns out I'm an old lady and I couldn't figure it out. No, I'm kidding. But, it takes practice. And it takes a lot of trial and error to say, I'm going to try this against my own better judgment. And the better judgment in the beginning is, I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. I need to research more. And all of these, it's that ruminating mind. There it is again. It goes back to that ruminating mind. And what is it going to take for you to tell it to shut up and to sit there while you experiment? While you put things to work, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Let that voice just chill so that you can see for yourself. And once you start seeing success after success after success, then you build the muscle of confidence naturally. It happens organically.
I agree 1000% with that, Grace. And I had that initial thought as well. You were not alone. I was like, man,
You thought I stood you up.
Did she forget? Did she change her mind? Did she, not have the time anymore? And I'm like, what's going on? So, it does happen naturally, and it's conflicting for me because now it's like with limiting beliefs, you want to believe that these are things that are taught through experience. But is there some part of our minds where limiting beliefs are innate? Like it's just natural to have these limiting, that voice in your head that is saying you're not good enough, or people will stand you up, or whatever the case is. Is this an innate thing, or is it something that is truly taught through experience, and we're more so playing the flashbacks of things that already happened?
Mm. So that's a great question. And I'm going to go ahead. First of all, I'm not a neuroscientist and I don't come from a degree in psychology.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I have learned, I would go to school. Actually, it's one of the only things that would bring me back to school would be a degree in neuroscience because it really does call me.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to do with the fact that we all come onto this earth and onto this life as a blank canvas. And our parents, as loving and gracious and good intentioned as they may have been, come into our lives. So day one is when we are born, and our parents, that's day one for them as well. Let's just put it that way. They come into our life with a history of trauma, with a history of values, with a history of whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so no, it's not innate. It doesn't just happen and it manifests naturally unless it's generational trauma that gets passed down through generations, and that's another conversation, of course. And I'm also not a therapist. But what I mean by that is it's more of a learned behavior. It comes from childhood and the early experiences we've had that led to similar experience, like more rejection, more people making fun of us, more people calling us weirdos, more people bullying us in a way. I don't know, whatever applies to you, right? And then the thought of realizing your potential, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, no, this is what I want. This is what I think I believe. So I'm going to hold on to that thought for a second. And this is what I want to create. And with that comes the thought of boundaries. What boundaries need to be employed so that you can focus on this thing unbothered by the world? You know, I
Mm-hmm.
had to put boundaries around the family members that always put me down. I had to. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the boundaries that I put in place with the people that as soon as I said what I wanted to do would just say something, anything that I would feel touched in a negative way by. It's like, why? Why you gotta rain on my parade? Why you gotta be whatever? I don't need your negativity. All of these, that's right. You don't need that negativity because you already you're already insecure all on your own. And so creating boundaries around those relationships that we seem to hold on to but don't really serve us is really important when it comes to flourishing in any business, not just content creation or sales.
Mm-hmm.
Because I it's like Captain Obvious. Have you seen those commercials? It's like I already know that the possibility is there for you to stand me up. I don't need my husband to be like, "Oh, he stood you up." Well, thank you, Captain Obvious. Yes, I know that's an option, right? And that didn't happen, but it's like the freshest situation we have here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a habit, and it's hard to break. It's a habit to listen to other people. It's a habit to give in to that negative mindset. It is a habit to doubt ourselves. And so breaking the habit is the hard part. But once you do, again, everything just opens up and it's a whole world of possibilities. Well, what else can I create? What other business am I interested in? What else could I sell? Right? Just one after the other.
Yeah. And I think setting those boundaries also comes from experience, and not just like the experiences that you have, but also giving yourself that grace, and no pun intended grace, right? But giving yourself
Mm-hmm.
the freedom to just kind of reflect and say, hey, I'm going to do this thing anyway. And whatever happens, I'll recover. If it's something bad, but if it's good, at the end of the day, it's something that I'm going to learn. And just kind of going back to reflecting on the possibility of, again, as we're talking about the fresher situation being stood up, it brings me back to the times when I was just now building this show from the ground up, and I'm trying to get anybody and everybody on the show, and you get people who don't necessarily take your time as serious as you may take it, and they just think it's just a FaceTime call or just something that they can hop on when they get the chance. And at first you get the thought, well, maybe it's another one of those situations, but then you become thankful. Like, now I'm thankful that I never got a chance to interview those people, because from that experience, it allows you to now create those boundaries and vet out the people that you do want to attract to have in your space, and that you want to share that energy with. And if it wasn't for having those experiences, I probably wouldn't have had the guests that I've had in the past that have led me to a Graciela Moore to have on the show. And you have been amazing so far. So I appreciate you just sharing your experiences with us, and just for sharing your energy and your light and things of that nature as well. So as we're still talking about the mindset, what type of mindset should you adopt before diving into something new? We talked about giving yourself that grace and just kind of going with the flow of things. Or should you have more of a structure and a plan and like some way of, jumping into something new? But what is typically your mindset when starting something new, from the Avon to the jewelry to the real estate to the coaching? Whenever you dove into these new industries, what was your mindset each time, or did it change?
I feel like it really comes down to having a mindset of possibilities. And so we can narrow that down to the word hope, coming from a place of hope. Because what you said earlier about being aware of the fact that this could not work, and then it's a learning opportunity if things don't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's mature hope. That's like the top mindset. And also being able to look back at those interactions where you thought you wanted them on your podcast, but it ended up being for the better. And now you're grateful that that gap was there. Looking back at your life with that gratefulness lens, that's hope. Like, straight from the American Psychological Association, they say the top mindset for a hopeful person is gratitude. And so understanding that your failures happen for a reason, and being grateful for every step of the way, even if you stumbled, even if you made a mistake, that's hope. And if I don't come at my idea, let's just bring the business to the idea, right? Which is the first step. If I don't approach my idea with hope, I might as well not even think about it. I need to have hope to say, here's my idea, here's the future vision that would not be there if I was hopeless. And now, what can I do today? What can I do the next day? How can I work at it step by step? And allowing yourself to step back and analyze strategically each step of the way creates the data that you need to look back to if it failed. Everything is an experiment. And so we need the data to see, this didn't work. Let me go back and see where I went wrong, how I can fix it. Or maybe you decide that this endeavor doesn't resonate and you get a new idea and you do it all over again. And so with hope comes the element of relentlessness and resilience, because we never give up. Hopeful people just never give up, because we know that if there's no hope here, there's hope there, there's hope for you, there's hope for me. And it's like there's a creativity thing that just springs forth from knowing that between now and my future vision, there's a lot that can happen and a lot that I can do to at least do my part. And then hopefully the universe does the rest, right? And hopefully things really come to fruition. And I feel like if the soul alignment piece is not there, this is why people stumble. and struggle, because if it's not for you, it's not for you, and the universe will not help you along, right?
That deserves that sound right there, because that was a lot of gems and a lot of just positivity and a lot of hope, right? And you are right. And I never really thought of gratitude as like a form of hope. And as you explained it, that was such an elaborate way of explaining it to Grace, that it really does make sense. And the more gratitude that you have, the more hope that you have. And naturally, I encourage everyone to be more grateful. I probably have shared once a week for, people that follow me on Instagram to write down 5 things that they're grateful for when they get home, and that's something that I do. If not once a week, I do it every night. There are some good weeks where I do it every single night, and there are some bad weeks where I only can do it, Sunday. And I still try to get better at it every single day to at least think of ways to be more grateful. But while we're still talking about hope, and in today's discussion, what do you think scientifically? How does hope play a huge role in goal achievement and us being able to accomplish a goal that we set for ourselves? The difference between that mature hope that you mentioned, and the standard hope that everyone understands it to be, and not having hope at all. What is the difference between those three, and how it affects our abilities to achieve goals?
Yes, thank you. So the work of Julie Naras divides hope into different types, right? And so what the American Psychological Association calls gratitude, Julie Naras calls it mature hope. And along with other types of hope in her work, there's unrealistic hope, which is, you really want to do something, but it's for all the wrong reasons, and you shouldn't be doing that, and it doesn't resonate. And why are you spending your time and energy on this? And it's just not realistic. And so we self-sabotage when we close our eyes to the rest of the picture, and we become unrealistic about our pursuit, and then we just give it our all, and then our world crumbles, and then we stay there. We do this to ourselves, right? And so, hopelessness, which is very true, prominent, and serious, is really about so much dissociation from the world that you have no vision. There is no idea. You're living in the day and you have no clue about tomorrow. And you get stuck in that mindset and it becomes a habit. And this is the thing, it's about reworking our brains and reshaping our life one step at a time. And so the first step when you're deep, deep down in the bottom of hopelessness is to reach for help. Help me out of here. Is it a therapist? Is it a shaman? Is it your priest, your pastor? Is it a teacher? Is it your mother? Who will facilitate the help and the clarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to already doing those things and then being in the moment where you're like, okay, well then here's my idea. What's the first goal with that? Like, here's my business idea. What's the first thing I should do? Well, that's where the strategic mind comes into play. And for those who are not used to working strategically, this is where business consulting comes into play. Somebody with experience and with a track record that allows you the language that you, as just someone with an idea, doesn't know or doesn't feel familiar with. And then with that clarity and with that awareness, goal setting isn't that hard. Why? Because when you have a vision and you decide this is my first step, like I said earlier, everything becomes clear. And so tomorrow I'm going to do this thing. And let's put a date on this one goal. Let's just use the mailing list, for example. I'm launching my business today, but my mailing list is not ready. Let's put a date on that. And so you put a date on your goal, you make it measurable from today to this date. And then once you set a date, you say, okay, well, on this week, I'm going to focus on the designing aspect of my mailing list. On this week, I'm going to focus on the hub that I want my mailing list to be at. Is it MailChimp? Is it MailerLite? You start thinking strategically, and all of a sudden, you're making things happen. And let's not forget that in retraining our brain comes the thought of training the brain to react a certain way when you achieve a goal. And so in week 1, when you settled on the design of your mailing list, you need to celebrate, because then you're giving that reward. You're letting your brain know, we did this. Let's go ahead and celebrate. Bing! Now that thought gets married one to another, and the next time you achieve something and you check a box, ding, there's that celebration, and it happens over and over and over again. And all of a sudden, wow, I'm really making moves. I'm really making things happen. And you love your life, and you are productive, and you are successful. And let's not forget as well that success is very subjective. What you think success is may not look anything like what I think success is. And so defining what success looks like to you is also part of the very early stages of building a business and being an entrepreneur. Because early on, success looked like, for me, just a working website, even with glitches, even with whatever, because I've never built a website before, and I did. And so success was already having a live website with nothing else on top of that. And so I did it. I built a website. It took me forever. I hated the process, but I was very happy with the results. So there you go.
Yeah, that is, it's interesting to hear how you mentioned the dings, right? And it sounds like these dings also build momentum and create a bigger, like a chain reaction to how hope can even increase and exponentially help you accomplish that goal even more. So I think that has a big thing to do with as well, Grace, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like also putting yourself in the right environments, in the right spaces, can enable, can play a huge role in that goal achievement as well. What type of environments do you like to create for yourself when goal setting and planning your year, planning your month, planning your quarter, planning your week? What does that environment look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, understanding how exactly you want to plan is also an authentic piece, because I have never liked to plan a year ahead. That's way too far in advance. I don't necessarily like to plan 6 months ahead. That's still way too far in advance. And so breaking it down to realize my 100% comfort zone is planning 2 weeks in advance, knowing and accepting that allows me control. And so with the control comes the flow of things. This is what I do. Let's go ahead and plan the next 2 weeks, right? And so again, there's that authenticity piece. What works for you may not work for me, and everybody is different, and everybody is allowed to be different unless you work in a team, and then everybody needs to figure out the common ground, and that's another conversation, right? And hope does apply to teams as well. But I personally like to keep my plans close, because who knows what could happen. I mean, I have a toddler. Life is very unpredictable over here. And when it comes to the word environment, oof, that was a huge insight for me becoming a coach, because we hear the word environment and we think about the turtles at the beach, and we think about straws, and we think about, the planet. And we are not conditioned to understand that this is my environment. My office is my environment, my studio, where I create. You know, if you are a night owl, or if you're a morning person, that's your environment. You know, rest assured that if you've always been a night owl and you want to launch a business, you're going to stay up launching your business. And if you're like me, I like to sleep when my toddler is sleeping. So I conditioned myself to not be a night owl. Then I am productive during the day. The sunshine is part of my environment and what helps me be productive. And so if clutter contributes to your anxiety, then you need to make sure your environment is neat. If scents and smells or noises uh, get in the way of your productivity, then you need to make sure that your environment is quiet or that it smells good or whatever. And all of this, if you think about it, goes back to that authenticity piece of who you are, what do you like, and how do you like to do it? Not the way you've been conditioned to do it all your life, not the way someone else is telling you to do it all your life, but you. Complete, genuine ownership of the experience. That I feel like it's such a privilege to be even able to say that that is what I have managed to build for myself, because everyone deserves that, I feel like.
And you used a very powerful word, Grace, which was ownership. And a word that I feel like many of us take for granted. And we take it for granted more so out of the limiting beliefs and the fear and those things that kind of kick in. And naturally, we don't want to take ownership. We don't want to take accountability. So many of us may want to put the blame on others when things don't work well in our lives. And essentially, if you're not in control of your own mind, then you really aren't in control of anything. And that ownership is just a piece that allows you to just be in control of your mind, being in control of your own experience, manifesting your own experiences and things of that nature. And that was one thing that I got from what you said. And another thing, which I was super happy to hear, is you don't plan your year. You don't plan a year in advance or a year out. That's too far. And I think our millionaires are probably even refreshed to hear that as well, because I've had an episode way back, maybe a few months ago, almost a year ago, where we talked about the 12-week year and how planning a year in advance is why so many people's New Year's resolutions fall through after March, because we're looking at it from a yearly perspective when we really should be looking at it, a lot of these long-term goals as quarterly goals. And then you have your short-term goals, which are daily, weekly, monthly goals and things of that nature. Was that more so the same mindset as far as why you don't plan a year in advance? I do know you mentioned a few other things, like life can hit you, right? Having a newborn and, so many other things can happen within that year. But are you also familiar with the 12-week year, and did that play a part in why you don't plan that far advance as well?
Well, to be honest, I am familiar with the 12-week year, but it's not necessarily something that I employ in those terms. It was very natural for me. It was something of, you know, there's that appreciation piece and there's that mindfulness piece that I coach people through. It's like we are just literally enjoying this vacation today. Such a blessing. And you're already bringing up that next year we're going on a cruise. I mean, come on. Next year, a lot can happen. We're not going to plan next year's vacation right now. And if you want to do that, be my guest. But that's not me. It never was me. I wanted more immediacy. And I think that's a generational thing as well. I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm an early millennial, so I'm almost 40. And with that comes, I was born in the era of internet and messenger and all of these things that were developed as I was growing up. Polaroids. What? You don't have to wait for the camera. Here's the picture, right? The immediacy. And so I just like to plan and to keep things close to home. And then again, the joy of making things happen on the go. And really, as a content creator, things really do flow in that sense. And I've been blessed with that flow of creativity that allows me to finish a week and move on to the other and move on to the other. And of course, in real estate, we do look at quarters. And so now, as a business owner, I do look at my quarters. However, I don't necessarily plan in 12 weeks. I just look back on a 12-week chunk, and I look at my business and say, this is what happened. This is how we did. I don't necessarily say, because of this, I think this is what should happen on quarter two. It's more of a, this is what we did. We're going to do it again and see what happens. And the mistakes we did, we're not going to make them again on the next 12 weeks. It's a constant reevaluation, and it's a constant participation. And there's that mature hope that Julie Naras talks about. Someone with mature hope can just sit in the discomfort of fear of the unknown and still participate and still say, well, this is what I can do today. Let's, gloves off, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And if you don't have hope, you don't really think in those terms. You're more closed off. Well, I'm not going to try that because it sounds ridiculous. But if you don't try it, you never know. I'm not sure if you're muted, but I can't hear you.
I was muted. And that's on me. But I was pretty much just applauding that phrase. If you don't try it, you never know. But that's great. And Grace, it's been a pleasure having you so far. And as we're getting ready to wrap things up, I just want to show my gratitude for us being able to come together, and for you being able to share your experiences with us all, and just being a great an amazing person. And I'm sure we are going to be able to connect in other ways as well after this. But as we're transitioning and switching gears, I do want to introduce the next segment, which is going to be our rapid fire. So that sound means rapid fire is upon us. And I have 5 random questions.
Fun.
Yes, it's 5 random questions that have nothing to do with anything we probably talked about for the last hour or so, right? So the I guess the vibe is to just be brief, be brilliant, but most importantly, have fun and be yourself, okay?
Oh, I said shoot.
Okay. All right, perfect. So here's number 1. What's the funniest / most disappointing / weirdest text you've ever received?
Ooh, a text?
Yep. Funniest or most disappointing?
/ or most disappointing. I mean, it's very disappointing when somebody cancels on you. Let's just bring it to the business, right? It's kind of sad, especially as a coach, because you're not canceling on me. I have my life, and I know who I am, and I have my coach. You're canceling on yourself, and that's kind of sad, right? And then the funniest and most random text I've ever received is from a top wisdomer, actually, because we're all getting to know each other, and we're all connecting on the back ends, and we're sharing our personal information. And Daniel F. Hart, bless his heart, he just texted me out of nowhere and gave me a blessing. And, your husband is so wonderful. And I wasn't expecting that. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so funny and sweet. And, what a community we've built, right?
Yeah.
And then what was the other one? Is that it? Does that answer your question?
No, that does answer my question.
Go ahead.
That does answer the question. And just to your point, yes, Wisdom is an amazing community that I'm just looking forward to being a part of every single time, that I see the notifications and I see your talks pop up, and I'm just like, okay, I got to get on and I got to get active. I love it. All right. So number 2 is, if everything in your house had to be one color, what color would you choose?
I would choose yellow.
Yellow, very bright, very vibrant.
Except I do like the contrast. So it's currently teal and yellow. The contrast.
Sun and water.
Yes. Hmm.
Like it.
And I'm
No,
I'm a Taurus and he's a Pisces, so there you go.
are you serious?
Yes.
Why? So I'm a Pisces and my wife is a Taurus.
Ooh, we need to talk.
Yeah, that's funny. That's pretty cool. Also,
Yeah.
also. Number three, who would you most like to sit next to on a 10-hour flight and why?
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, so many people. You know what? I'm gonna say Dio, the creator and founder of Wisdom, because we don't know much about who she is outside of Wisdom, and I would love to pick her brain about life in general. It's like, girl, let's get together, you know? And so I could be 10 hours with her. She's super smart and amazing. So why not?
Yeah, and
We
I
need
would
we
love
need to
to
let her
hear.
know that yeah, we need to let her know I gave her a shout out.
I will definitely, probably create this little reel and tag her so we can put it out there. And I would love to hear how that interview went with her. Did that happened on Tuesday or yesterday, right?
That was yesterday. Yes, and it was amazing.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, I'm sure I'll hear more about it from you offline. But number four, what would be the most or what would be the worst movie sequel ever made?
Oh my gosh. I'm a film major, so this is so hard. I mean, I'm gonna this is what I'm hearing. I'm gonna go with the flow and say all movie sequels.
All movie sequels. Okay.
because because there's none like the original.
That this is true. This is true. I would say for me, it's probably going to be, yeah, no, I can't think of it off the top of my head. I can see how difficult that was.
Yes.
All right. The last one, Grace, is what is something that you hate but you wished you loved?
Hmm. Oh my gosh, this is making me blank again because hate is such a strong word and I'm like I'm trying to really find something, right? But it just really doesn't align with me to be like, oh, I hate that. But I do struggle a lot with um as a highly sensitive person. I struggle a lot with the dogs because they bark out of nowhere and they break my focus. And it's like, oh, why do we have dogs? Like, who needs dogs, right? And I get into that mindset. So I don't hate them. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't hate pets, and I'm not, being that kind of person. But I do struggle a lot with the fact that they are obnoxious and they interrupt my flow sometimes, and that gets in the way. And that's really a sensitivity. If you're not highly sensitive, you may never think that your dogs are barking in the background. It just doesn't affect you, but it does me.
And I think they are very obnoxious. And to your point, my obnoxious dog barked in the middle of while you were talking not too long ago, and for me, it drove me crazy. I'm like,
Right.
it's like
Your
when
heart
I'm do,
stops.
it's like man, and it's my fault for setting up my studio at home. But boy, I wish I could just make it work, and I wish you could just be quiet, dog, and stop barking when someone comes in the house. So yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And so it's not hate, but we it could be in
Yeah,
all
no.
honesty and fairness, right? And it's okay because we're human. We're not
Ex-
perfect, right?
exactly, exactly. Well, Grace, that wraps up our rapid fire. And as we are wrapping up our evening, I have just two more questions for you. And these questions are, for our guests to, get a chance to know you a little bit more, and for you to have even, a little bit more fun as well. And for season 4, I like to do this exercise for our guests to be, engage with us a little bit more. So I want you to give us a red pill versus blue pill scenario. What I'll do is I'll throw it in our Facebook group. I'll throw it on Twitter, on the polls for our guests to listen to this and vote which they'll choose. So if you could give us a red pill versus blue pill scenario, what does that look like?
I mean, you can take the blue pill and be in complete control ownership of who you are and what you want to create, or you can take the red pill and just work the corporate world, work for someone else, live for someone else, and not even know what you can create. And to me, that's a no-brainer. I don't know about you.
It to me, that's a no brainer as well. And I'm going with the blue pill. And I probably shouldn't have said that because I don't want to sway anyone's vote. But it reminds me of
Is it's not politics, anyone. We're not taking drugs and we're not doing politics. It's just an
exactly.
example.
Exactly, and it reminds me of one of my homies, Ryan. I had him on the show a couple weeks ago, and he gave us a red pill, blue pill scenario, and his was kind of like yours, but what it was like, he really sold the blue pill. Like his blue pill was like live forever, and his red pill was like die tomorrow. It was like
Well, you
very.
see, there's that like future visioning versus, I want to bring it to the present. Let's build a business. Let's build a life that you are really full ownership and full fulfillment. That's like a redundant thing, right?
Mhm.
Complete fulfillment. I don't know. Now I'm getting redundant.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the blue pill being, it put in a little bit of work, but have, the complete fulfillment of life and having that control. And then, the red pill is, maybe you have everything given to you, but you're living someone else's life and working for other people, but you have the freedom to just kind of be and just go through the motions. I think that kind of
Mhm.
gives people that which one do I want to do? Right. So I like that. So I'm going to throw it on the polls. I'm going to put it in our
Okay.
Facebook group in the mastermind, also on Twitter. So you millionaires who are following us on Twitter, be on the lookout for that poll. Let us know which one you picking. You picking that blue pill, you picking the red pill. But appreciate that, Grace. And the last question is, what's going to be some advice you would give 18-year-old self? You're walking down the street and you just happen to see a reflection of 18-year-old Graciela. What's some advice that you would give yourself?
Well, to be honest, I would give myself the advice of find out what other options are there besides going to school. Because and bear with me, having
Mm-hmm.
a degree is great and going to school is definitely needed. However, I did my bachelor's and then I started my master's and spent a lot of money on that. And then my accident prevented me from finishing my master's, and I realized that there was a different way. And so we are generationally driven to think that if my dad is a lawyer, I have no choice but to become a lawyer, right? If my dad went to school, I have no choice but to go to school. And that's simply not true. And so if I'm 18 years old and I have an 18-year-old stepson, I have five stepchildren. The youngest is 16. So they're all adults essentially. And so this question really touches me because it's like, what really resonates with you? Oh, I want to go to an institute to work in refrigeration and HVAC. That's great. Okay, let's do it. Like, there's no pressure. You know, you are the magician. You are the creator of your life, right? You have divine help, yes, but it's you taking the action, right? That's what I mean. And so understanding early in life that there is a world of possibilities and a buffet of options, we don't become adults thinking that there is. And I would definitely tell myself there's more to life, there's more to do, there's other options. Because people like me realized it a little too late, and now we're getting into that flow. And so now, if my 18-year-old says, I'm not going to college, I want to just get this certification or this license, I'm like, yes, go for it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just about, oh, I want to go to school because my parents told me to and I need a diploma. That's not aligned. It's not aligned. If somebody else told you to do it and it didn't resonate with you to begin with, why are you doing that? Why?
The biggest question is why, and I think I really want to hone in on that word abundance, which is always coming up on the show, abundance, and it is really I think that's very honest feedback. That's very honest, very true. And I think I share those same sentiments too, Grace, is just, thinking what is the reason why? Why am I pushing for my child to get this degree? Do they even want to get this degree? And, we have this mindset that will go into debt. I have friends that are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, from school to not even utilize the degree that they went into debt for. But imagine if we had that same mindset and just went into debt $20,000 to pay for a course or a certification, so that we could, become this expert, right? Like we could literally invest like a fifth of that, to go towards something that's more aligned with what our passions are. And again, not to say that going to school is wrong, because I have a bachelor's degree myself, and I graduated from an HBCU that I love, and I'm always going to push my HBCU out there. But still, I also push for the fact that, identifying your why, like, why do you want to get this degree? Is it for you? Because if it's not for you, it's actually it hurts you more to go to school to get this degree and go into debt for a degree that you end up not using, which I see so many of my friends actually in that position. So I see both sides. I see both sides of it, and I appreciate that advice, and I appreciate that that truth. So now I want to give you the space, Grace, to, just share, what you're excited about. Tell our millionaires where they can find you, where they can engage with you, some news you may have to share. Now, the floor is yours to kind of share.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. I mean, I just want to say thank you again for recognizing, right, my potential and inviting me over to share with you, and to the listeners for supporting you, because now they're supporting me as well. And now they're in my network and all of this. And so it's beautiful how things just progress, right, and flow together. And I'm very excited for what's next without knowing what's next, because social audio has opened doors that we didn't even realize. So you were a podcaster before Wisdom, but now you're on Wisdom and you're making all of these connections. Well, you don't know what connection is going to happen next, and neither do I. However, for the first time ever, I'm kind of excited about that unknown factor of who else am I going to connect with, right? What other conversations am I going to have? And most importantly, looking at it from that strategic entrepreneurial lens, what doors are they going to open? What else will come of it? And then when that gets aligned with my desires, well, I want to write a book. Well, I want to help even more people, and then that top vision that I won't share because I keep it, under wraps, but all of these plans, what I want for myself. And so I'm excited for just the very immediate. I'm excited for this podcast episode to go and do its thing, and to just be here. And take it all in, because it really is such a blessing. Thank you. Oh, and to answer your question, so people can find me on Instagram. Please follow me. That's where I am every day, all day. songofmyself.ig, or on Twitter, SOM Coaching. And then somcoaching.com is my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Grace. And it has been a blessing having you on here as well. I say it all the time. I believe that, God speaks to us mostly through people. And you have been gifted with a voice that is speaking to a lot of people right now and is going to resonate with a lot of people. And just having you and having your energy join us today. What was truly an experience. So I appreciate you for bringing yourself and, being present in this moment with me and our millionaires that are tuning in with us. And as always, I want to also give that thanks and that grace to our millionaires. I'm super thankful to have you all join us week in, week out. And I'm just excited to kind of see, what type of change agents you guys become as you apply the principles that you especially heard tapping in with us today. And again, I do want to bring up the fact that Grace and I are on wisdom. And if you really, resonated with everything that Grace has said and you really enjoyed this conversation, you can hear her a lot more on Wisdom, on the Wisdom app. You can just type in on your app store Wisdom and you'll be able to download that app. You can find Graciela Moore on Wisdom. You can also find her on IG at Song of My Life.
Song of Myself.
songofmyself.ig and be able to engage with her there, and also check out her website SOM, and that was somcoaching.com, correct?
Yes, because it's Song of Myself. There you go.
Song of Myself.
SOM coaching. That's right.
There we go. Well, again, millionaires, if you resonated with anything you heard today, make sure that you do the follow-up, because there's fortune in the follow-up, right? Follow up and engage with us. Let us know what you enjoyed. Let us know what resonated with you. Let us know what maybe struck a nerve, because at the end of the day, all feedback is good feedback. And I love to hear, how we can do better and just connect with one another on a daily basis. I'm your guy, Kai Speaks, and you just heard it from Graciela Moore on the science behind hope and limiting beliefs. Just remember to keep focus, build momentum, and drive results so you can live abundantly. Peace. And I'm going to end that recording now, Grace.